Diolch yn fawr i Hedd ac Alwen, a gobeithio fod ganddoch chi bellach ddealltwriaeth o'r hyn sydd ar gael a sut mae'n mynd ati i wneud cais. Ond dwi'n siŵr fod gennych chi lwyth o gwestiynau sydd angen eu hateb, ac y fyddan ni cyn bo hir yn agor y sesiwn i'r llawr. Ond os ydych chi am ofyn cwestiwn, plis teipiwch eich gwestiynau yn y blwch Q&A sydd ar wilod eich sgrin chi drws nesaf i'r bwtwm chat y fanna. Mae gen i bobl yn helpu fi yn y cefndir i gadw llygad ar y cwestiynau yn dod i mewn. Felly, os fydd yna lot, plis byddwch yn amyneddgar, ac os na lwyddon ni ateb popeth yn ystod y sesiwn yma, peidiwch â poeni, mi fydd y tîm yn ateb chi ar ôl y digwyddiad yma heddiw, cymigwch chi'r atebion ar e-bost. Ond ei ymuno ar gyfer y panel nesaf yma, mae gennym ni fwy o staff Uchelgais Gogledd Cymru yn ymuno hefo ni. Mae Hedd ac Alwen dal hefo ni, a hefyd mae gennym ni Robin Lyfroc, rheolwr rhaglen sy'n arwain ar dwristiaeth a bwyd amaeth, Stuart Whitfield, rheolwr y rhaglen ddigidol, David Matthews, rheolwr rhaglen tir ag eiddo, a Henry Aron, rheolwr y rhaglen ynni. A dwi'n hyderus y bydd un o'r 6 yn gallu ateb y cwestiynau byddwch chi'n anfon i fewn, felly diolch o flaen llaw i chi am y cwestiynau hynny. If we start with you, Henry, what kind of projects are you looking for the portfolio that you hold?
Thanks, Bethan. Firstly, I'd encourage anyone who's interested in finding out more about the Low Carbon Energy Programme to visit the relevant page on our website and also the FAQs for the Growth Deal funding opportunity. Broadly speaking, what we're looking for is projects that deliver against the Low Carbon Energy Programme's objectives, which are to create new jobs, to increase productivity, to bring in additional investment and to result in carbon savings. And for projects that are focused on energy generation, we also have a specific objective around increasing the capacity of low carbon energy across North Wales as well. So just to give you an idea, I'll outline the 5 projects that are currently being supported by the Low Carbon Energy Programme. So firstly, we've got the Smart Local Energy project, which will establish a fund to support regional projects to help decarbonise the energy system. We've got the Hydrogen Hub project, which aims to deliver a green hydrogen hub in North Wales. We've got the Cydnaf project, which will fund infrastructure to enable the future growth of the Morlais tidal energy project. We've got the Trawsfynydd project, where the Growth Deal will fund infrastructure to support the development of a small modular reactor at Trawsfynydd. And then we've got the Egni project, which will fund a new building at M-Spark, focused on increasing research and innovation in the low carbon energy sector. Thank you. Diolch.
Diolch, Robin. Sorry, Henry. I was going to move to Robin next. That's where my brain was going. What kind of projects are you looking at the Agri-Food and Tourism Programme?
Diolch, Bethan. So within the Agri-Food and Tourism Programme, we're looking for jobs for projects that will deliver jobs for the region, as well as the private sector investment that similar to how Henry outlined for his programme. We are also looking for projects that support improvements in productivity across all 3 sectors. So in particular for this programme, it's looking at decarbonisation and diversification opportunities and training and innovation. With this programme, we are looking for projects as well that delivers for rural communities, so not necessarily based in rural communities, but making sure that that link is clear. Yeah, that's all from this programme.
Lovely. Thank you. Your questions are coming in now, so I'll turn to the audience. A question from Dan Moria. Will there be a second round of funding application if the deadline in March is missed? I think Hedd could possibly answer this one.
Diolch, Bethan. We're not anticipating a second round at this time, so we have 30 million available, and we'll hope that we can allocate that 30 million out through this process. Obviously, if we're not able to do that, or if further funding comes available in the future, there may be a further round, but at this point, we're not expecting another round of funding.
Thank you. There was another anonymous question there asking if it was 30 million over 13 years or per annum. I think you've explained that it is a one-off option.
Yes, it's a total pot of 30 million that we have available to support projects. So we would expect that to be allocated across either one or a number of projects at the end of this process. And the way the funding works is that will be obviously allocated out according to the profile of the project. So it's when the project needs the money.
And another question for you, Heather, while I've got you there, it's a question from Leon Kermos. Is it 50% match funding that's required?
Yes. So no is not 50%. We've got a different requirement for each of the programs. So for example, in agri-food and tourism, it's a lower level of match funding requirement. So that is 50%. But for land and property and low carbon energy, we're looking for 2 million of match funding per 1 million of growth deal funding.
Okay, another question that's come in, possibly for you again, Head. Will applications be required to include letters of support from each local authority the project plans to deliver operating?
That's not a requirement, but obviously letters of support from key stakeholders would be viewed as a positive in terms of the application.
Okay, and possibly bring Alwen in to answer this next one from Narinda Jahal. What types of funding are available? Is it just capital match funding?
Yes, it is just capital. The growth deal is based on capital funding. So yeah, we would be looking for capital match funding.
Okay, and would a contract for long-term lease of land in North Wales count as match funding? Don't know if Hale or David wants to answer that one.
I think probably David.
I think we could have a look at that. I think we'd look at that and take that into account. I think as a sort of as a potential for match funding, especially if it's a long lease over a certain minimum term. I'd imagine it would need to be if you're talking about substantial capital investment. So, you know, that would probably be suitable, but we'd need to see the detail, I think, in the application.
And while I've got you on the screen there, David, if you can mention what kind of projects that you're looking for as part of the land and property programme as well.
Yeah, certainly, Bethan. Yeah, the existing programme projects are a mixture, really. The programme targets are to deliver employment space, employment land, and also housing land. But the way we're looking at it at the moment, the residential element would probably be part of a mixed-use development site, so to help deliver a viable scheme. We're also thinking at some of the project sites that could be coming forward, maybe sites which have got challenging development issues, so at normal development costs such as demolition or remediation potentially. But also one of the projects we're dealing with is delivering of employment space, advanced built accommodation. So again, meeting that gap between viable to make a project viable between cost and value as well. So in all of those areas, we'd anticipate some project applications be coming forward. I think that's fair, Bethan.
Okay, lovely. Bring Hale and Alwen back in. A question from Ricky Roscombs. What happens if our project crosses various sectors of the programmes to include energy, innovation, land and tourism, for example?
I think we need to be, I'll take that one. I think we need to be dynamic and mindful of delivering the benefits, really. So we're really keen to consider projects that come in that can demonstrate how they meet the benefits that we are required to deliver, because it's the contract and the agreement we've made with government. If it does meet several of the sectors, then that can be explained within the proposal, I think. But the minimum criteria and then what on top of that minimum criteria that can be delivered by the project is more of interest to us, I would say.
And another question from Vicky, the roles that would be created, can they be direct roles or can they be due to that of the actions of the project through small business startup support and reskilling?
So we're keen to understand from a project perspective how jobs are created, where those jobs sit, and the value of the jobs that are created and the sustainability of the jobs as well, I think, with our interest being in creating, at the portfolio level, in creating over 4,000 new jobs within the region. And the aim, ideally, is for those roles to be sustainable and provide long-term employment, high-value long-term employment for people in North Wales. So again, I think that can be ideal if they're direct jobs, but if it can be explained within the proposal that the project also delivers sustainable indirect jobs, then that should be fed into the proposal as well, and demonstrated how.
Question for you next, Heath. How and at what stages would funds be released?
I'll take that one, Diolch Bethan. So how the funding works is once we reach the final investment decision, so the full business case, we would then enter into a funding agreement with the project sponsor and Ambition North Wales. Funding is then released in arrears. It's provided in arrears following a successful claim, and the period, the frequency of those claims will have been agreed in advance between ourselves and the project sponsor, so that there's no one size fits all on there. We're fairly flexible. It's probably quarterly, but that would all be agreed in advance and be part of the funding agreement that's signed.
Next question is from the tourism industry, so we'll turn to Robin for this one. It's from David McCann. Would hotels be categorised within the tourism category rather than property, as clearly implications on match funding?
Thank you, Bethan. I think it really needs to be looked at in terms of where it what the project will support in terms of the programme spending objectives, because they are quite distinct between Lands and Property Programme and the Agri-Food and Tourism Programme. So if the project is looking to support decarbonisation and diversification or investment in skills and innovation, then that would land it within the Agri-Food and Tourism Programme. And then if it's more looking, as David described earlier, to support investment in and development of land, then that's probably more one for the Land and Property Programme. I guess just to give an idea of the projects in the Agri-Food and Tourism Programme, at the moment we have the Glenclevon Rural Economy Hub, which is supporting startup businesses with incubation space and access to a knowledge centre. And then also the Tourism Talent Network project, which is supporting a network of private sector companies working with Grŵp Llanrwthfrymennau to boost skills across the region in tourism and hospitality. We previously had a project with Coleg Cambria working towards a net zero farming project, and that's being taken forward through alternative funding sources. So that's led to that one dropping out and space for more in this programme.
Now the question on match funding here, where these cannot be confirmed as they require commercial agreements at present, will letters of intent be acceptable as part of the process?
Diolch Bethan. What we're looking for in terms of match funding is, I think, as much certainty as possible at this stage, because deliverability is crucial for us. So yes, at this stage, then letters of intent would be sufficient in terms of you've identified where that match funding is coming from and you've got a letter of intent. The more certainty a proposal can provide around where the match funding is coming from, the better it will score in the process. And certainly as we progress through, we may require more certainty on that element. But for this application, letters of intent would be sufficient.
Thank you. Next question is for Henry. What would a low carbon consortium look like?
Well, in terms of consortium, we'd welcome applications from partnerships or from consortia that can demonstrate added value and impact the collaborative approach and delivery against our targets. There is some additional information within the FAQ section on our website about how companies, organisations can come together to develop a consortium or a partnership. and also some further information about how projects come together to form a package bid, where there could be several linked smaller projects grouped together to increase value and impact across the region. Thank you.
Okay, back to Hayes. How many individual projects do you envisage the funding will be allocated to? You know, is it going to be 15 times 2 million? Is it going to be potentially 120 million and then the other 10 being shared out? How do you envisage it working?
Yeah, Bethan. It's very hard to know until we see what projects are out there. It could certainly be one large scale project that takes the whole 30 million, but that would need to be a project that is you know, of significant regional value and would have to deliver significantly on our targets around jobs and investment. I certainly don't see it being 15 £2 million projects. You know, there is a cost to going through this process. You know, we have to produce business cases, so it could be a combination of a few larger projects and a few smaller projects, but I wouldn't expect it to be, you know, 10 to 15 small projects. I'd expect it to be a combination of a couple of larger projects and a couple of smaller projects as part of that wider portfolio. But really, it's very difficult to give an answer on that because we want to select the best package of projects that deliver the greatest impact and the greatest benefit to North Wales. And until we can see and assess what that looks like, it's difficult to give a straight answer, I'm afraid.
Okay, if you stay there, Heather, I'll bring Alwen in as well. Question from Liam Cumos. Are the growth deal team able to discuss potential projects ahead of the March deadline?
So I'll start, and Alwen, you can jump in. So as we've launched a competitive process, we won't be commenting on the suitability of any individual proposals during this period because we want to have a, you know, fair and transparent process for all. If there are, you know, general questions that we can answer, we'll do that via email, and we'll make that information available to everyone via our FAQs. But we certainly won't be able to entertain kind of one-to-one meetings about specific details of projects and whether they would be suitable.
Anything else to add, Alwen?
No, nothing to add to that. I think Ed's answered it, and you know, I'm sure everyone participating will appreciate that it's fairness and transparency that needs to be demonstrated in how we handle every application, really.
Diolch yn fawr. Back to you again, Hayes. Once projects have been selected to join the growth deal, how long does it take to get a business case approved?
Diolch, Bethan. There isn't one straightforward answer to this one either, I'm afraid. It really does depend on the scale and complexity of a project. As smaller projects will require smaller business cases and be more straightforward to take through the process. Larger, more complex projects probably have a bigger requirement in terms of business case development and demonstrating evidence. But a good business case, if I can put it like that, should be able to go to outline business case approval within 6 months, depending on the scale, of course. After that, the timings really depend on the different types of projects will have different procurement requirements. Some complex procurements can take up to 18 months. So that timescale is dependent on a number of factors before we get to the final investment decision.
Okay, if you stay where you are, there's another question for you. Should a private sector application that has multiple operations that currently operate under an umbrella of separate limited companies need to place all limited companies into a single entity?
That is a very specific question, and I'm afraid I do not know the answer to that. We will take that one away. We'll consult with our legal department, and we'll respond in writing after the event.
Okay, and another one for you here, the possibly Alwen. If a match funding partner declines to proceed during, oh, it's gone off my screen, hold on a second. Oh. If a match funding partner declines to proceed during the process post-application, will the project fold or will opportunity be given to find others?
This might depend on when during the process this happens, but I would like to think that we would give the proposer the opportunity to seek alternative investment to make sure the project can go ahead. But obviously it depends on when and what the critical decision points are in our process.
Diolch yn fawr. Are there any restrictions on universities being involved in consortia, e.g. how much of the funding, where they're located, and can they lead a project?
There's no restrictions on universities being involved. In fact, the two universities in North Wales, Bangor University and Wrexham Glyndŵr University, are project sponsors for a number of projects within the North Wales Growth Deal already.
Okay, we've got a question on agriculture this time. So Robin, it'll be one for you. An agriculture element of the application, would traditional training skill provision like dry stone walling score equally as high as facilities in latest technology like hydroponics? Would the application be scored additionally if the location venue is being operated carbon efficiently or carbon neutral?
Thank you, Bethan. I can't comment specifically on any particular project ideas, but just to reinforce the spending objectives for this programme, we're looking for capital projects that drive job creation and private sector investment, as well as supporting decarbonisation and diversification and skills and innovation. So if a project meets all of those or some of those areas in part, then it would certainly be welcome to submit an application and then progress through the process that Heather's described.
Lovely, diolch yn fawr. Question for you, Alwen, from Norinda Johal. In this tranche of funding, is there opportunity to work with the Mid-Wales growth team too?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess, the economy isn't a thing that has boundaries. Geographies have boundaries. The economy doesn't. So we know the economy flows over and across boundaries, and people move over boundaries for work and for jobs. I think whilst we need to demonstrate that the investment, so the £30 million investment is creating jobs within the North Wales economy, I think it's really important for us to open active dialogues with cross-border partners and define opportunities where we can work together across borders. So not just that border with Mid Wales, but across the region as well, where there are opportunities and we know that people move. There are opportunities to discuss how we can make the most of the leverage the most value from the investment we have to invest in projects. I think, what we would say from a geographic perspective is that we want that investment to stay within our own region of North Wales, but we also recognise that that doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity to work with cross-border partners to invest in a way that delivers value, delivers jobs, and impacts the value of the economy in our respective regions. And we have existing relationships with many other growth deals, not just within Wales, but outside of Wales as well, particularly in areas such as Northern Ireland, where there are very similar economic challenges to get to grips with. And there's a process of learning and sharing, and with our colleagues up in Scotland as well, to make sure that we're sharing best practice and we're not sort of repeating key mistakes. So I think whilst that answer may be a little bit vague, I think positively, yes, there's an opportunity here to have conversations and to understand the opportunities more than anything.
Just to give Alwyn and Hare the break, if you can bring Stuart a drop into the next question. What kind of projects will you be looking for to join the digital connectivity and the high value manufacturing programmes?
I'll go first there, Bethan. So in terms of what we have at the moment in the programme, it's very much around improving the distribution and quality of digital connectivity, both fixed and mobile. So we'd be looking for projects which, consistent with the portfolio spending objectives around jobs, GVA and inward investment, would direct that investment to improve the kind of quality of those networks, really as an enabler to economic growth. So it's a very broad topic, and if those viewing today were to go onto the website, you'd see the kind of scope and flavour of our projects that we currently have, and it's similar projects that I would expect to see come forward for this a new round.
Coming from a high value manufacturing perspective, in addition to the jobs, productivity and investment interests, the high value manufacturing programme is looking to strengthen relationships between academia and businesses. So really looking to kind of bring that relationship closer, and also in particular to strengthen research and innovation generally across the region, and provide skills training and upskilling around technology and around particular technologies, innovation and research.
Diolch yn fawr. Question for Henry that came in before the webinar started. Is this funding applicable to the nuclear sector?
Yes, it's available to any project that delivers against the objectives of the low carbon energy programme that I outlined in my first response, and that are set out on our website. And indeed, the Trawsfynydd project is already part of the low carbon energy programme, which is focused on developing a small modular reactor at the Traws site.
Okay, picking up on a question we had a few minutes ago about cross-border, we've had two sort of supplementary questions on this for Alwyn and Hedd. So could cross-border partners include Ireland if this promotes trade? And in regards to the border question, what would happen if we gained match funding or investment from Cheshire, Merseyside, North West? Is that an issue?
I think we'd need, again, it's dependent on the actual project. Maybe invite Head to follow my answer here, but at the portfolio level, we need to deliver against the portfolio targets that we've agreed with government, and that means delivering the £1 billion of investment total. We don't mind really where that investment comes from, and we're engaging and want to engage with as wide a network of private sector stakeholders and other public sector stakeholders as we can, to be fair. We recognise that there may be interest internationally as well, and as long as, you know, ethically the investment fits within the laws of the land, then we're absolutely happy to engage in conversations and consider how we achieve that £1 billion for North Wales. In terms of opening discussions and considering project details, I think it's important to sort of understand the detail behind that, and that's what we'll get through the project, the call for projects, I guess. We'll be able to comment more fully once we understand the type of projects that are proposed. I don't know, Heath, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I'd add to that, Alwyn, is obviously the important thing from our perspective is that the investment is made in North Wales, so the money is spent on activities or buildings in North Wales. That's the key thing for the North Wales growth deal. But yes, the investment could come cross-border, it could come from international
Lovely. And can I thank you all for all the questions that are coming in? You're keeping us really busy here on our toes with all the questions. If you do have any further questions, please type them into the Q&A box so that we can keep going at the pace that we have been going for the last half hour. Next question is also for Hedd and Alwen, so stay where you are. If the deadline is the 27th of March, do you already know what projects you will select? Suggestion here, there's not enough time to get all the information in to fill in the application. And do you have an idea how many hours it will take people to, fulfill all the forms that you have and to submit? Is it an idea of how long it'll take?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know how long it might take. I think it depends on the maturity of your project. I think, as I've mentioned earlier on in my presentation, deliverability is really important for us, and we've set some quite high deliverability criteria so that we're able to select projects that can move quickly into delivery and start realising the benefits of the investment for North Wales. So we believe it's perfectly doable for a fairly mature project to complete the relevant information within 6 weeks. Obviously, that would be much harder for a project at a concept stage, but a project at a concept stage would really struggle to meet the criteria we've set out in terms of deliverability. But we don't know what projects are going to be selected. We are really interested to see what comes in through this process. It's a genuinely competitive process, and we're looking forward to hopefully being able to select the best package of projects that will deliver for North Wales.
Okay, and are there any penalties if a project fails to deliver on its targets?
So there will be a funding agreement between ourselves and the successful projects at the end of the business case process, and that funding agreement reflects the contract that we have with government in terms of delivery of the growth deal. So we do have 3 key targets in terms of job creation, GVA and investment that we need to meet as a region. Otherwise, ultimately, in the worst case scenario, the governments could claw back that funding. So we obviously need to protect ourselves, and some of that will be passed on to projects. So in a worst case scenario, if projects aren't able to meet their targets, particularly on jobs, GVA and investment, there could be a clawback situation, but that would be in the worst case scenario, and we'd hope to work with projects to maximise what they can deliver before we reached that sort of point.
Okay, I'm going to bring Robin in just for the next question, if that's okay. How are you considering sustainable tourism in your projects?
Thank you. So within this programme, the scope of the funding would include sustainable tourism. So an application would be welcome. I can't comment on the specifics of that, but as well as any proposed project focusing on the programme objectives, it's also worth looking at the Ambition North Wales carbon emissions and biodiversity commitments. So if a project proposed an aspect of tourism sustainability that delivered on those considerations, then it can be set out in the expression of interest.
Lovely, diolch. I'm bringing Hedd back in. Is there a list of preferred and trusted consultancies who may be used when presenting both direct and indirect jobs protected?
Unfortunately, we can't provide a list of trusted consultancies, but what we can do is suggest what you might look for in a consultancy, and obviously you would be looking for a company with experience of producing 5-case business cases in line with both Better Business Case Guidance and HM Treasury Green Book, and experience of working on other growth deal projects would clearly be a benefit. And there are a number of growth deals across the UK other than ours that where projects are at a much more advanced stage of development. So that information should be available from any decent consultancy in this space.
Okay, another question. It's difficult to forecast my costs in the current economic circumstances. if I proceed through the business case development stage, can I ask for more funding if costs go up further?
Unfortunately, we have a fixed pot of funding for the growth deal, so it's capped at 240 million from government. It's not linked to inflation or anything like that. So the funding available for projects bidding into this process is capped. So there's no further funding available. So we would encourage projects in estimating costs to, estimate based on inflation, to include elements around contingency. But if costs go up further, there would be no additional funding from the growth deal, and we'd be looking for the project sponsor to put forward additional funding, or to look at whether the project could be delivered in a slightly different way but still realise the benefits but at a lower cost.
You mentioned consultancies earlier, but is there anywhere that people can find guidance on business case development? Can you point somebody in the right direction on that one?
Yes, we can provide links to that. So the Better Business Case guidance is on the Welsh Government website. So if you just Google Better Business Case methodology, you'll find it there. You've got the guidance documents. There's one for projects, there's one for programs. It's very useful. So that's the main place I would direct people to. Obviously, for more detailed technical work, you can also Google the HM Treasury Green Book, but we'll make sure both those links, if they're not already on our website, are up later this week.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Henry in for this next question. Would the funding be suitable for hydrogen transport opportunities?
Thanks, Bethan. Yeah, it's a similar answer to my question about whether the funding is suitable for nuclear. Really, kind of any project that can deliver against the programme objectives would potentially be suitable. So again, just to outline what they are, creating new jobs, bringing in additional investment, and for something like a hydrogen transport project as well, looking at delivering carbon savings. What I would say about hydrogen is that later in this calendar year, we'll launch a separate, more focused competition to bring on board a sponsor to develop and deliver a hydrogen hub. But yes, there is the potential of a hydrogen transport project putting a bid in for this. Thank you.
Lovely, diolch yn fawr. We are coming to the end of the questions that you have submitted. So if you've got that burning question you want to type in, if you can do it in the next couple of minutes, and hopefully we'll get a chance to answer them all before we finish. So this is another question for Alwen and Heath. Are you looking for consortia bids, or are you happy if an organisation bids individually with support of key partners?
Either one is acceptable, Bethan. We're looking for a lead organisation for the project, and that could be just one organisation completely leading on all aspects of the project, or it could be one lead organisation representing a consortia of businesses or organisations. So it's really either.
And can match funding come from other public sector sources?
Yes, so match funding can come from either the private sector or the public sector. There's no specific requirements on either one, as long as the minimum criteria is met.
Okay, one question that was submitted earlier. The idea that I have won't create the necessary job numbers as specified in the criteria. Will there be other funding rounds for smaller projects in the future?
Not through the North Wales growth deal. As I mentioned earlier, there's no anticipated further funding rounds. There are, of course, a number of other funding sources available that might be more suitable for smaller projects, and one of them, SPF, has just closed its first application window on Friday. So we certainly try to promote these other opportunities, and we'll continue to do so on our social media channels, but we're not expecting another tranche of growth deal funding. As Henry's just mentioned, there are a couple of specific project-related funding opportunities that will be coming up either later this year or start of next year, one of them being hydrogen based, and the other is around smart local energy, which again Henry mentioned earlier, which will be a fund which can support businesses and community organisations with transitioning their activities into net zero. And we'll share more details of that fund later on in the year.
Okay, one more question to you, Heb. Can work begin beforehand?
Yes, on projects, so work could begin beforehand, but it's obviously at risk because there's no guarantee of funding from us until later on in the process, and we obviously need to make sure that the funding for any business case does deliver additional benefits and isn't covering work that's already been completed outside of the scope of the business case.
Lovely. Going to bring Alwen in here so that Heb can have a break. Conscious we're working really hard today. Alwen, what is government's role in approving projects?
Diolch, Bethan, and thank you for the question. Yeah, so the principle of growth deals is that the accountability and the responsibility for selecting projects is devolved into local areas. So it's devolved into North Wales in this case to decide upon the best projects to bring forward for funding in order to deliver on the portfolio's outcomes. And that's, if I go back to my presentation, that's about creating the, up to 4,200 new jobs, value on overall GVA and the value of the economy, and then that £1 billion worth of investment. So governments don't actually approve the projects that come forward. They devolve that accountability to our decision makers at the local level, and our decisions are made by our board, and that's the board is called the Economic Ambition Board within Ambition North Wales, and the board is made up by our partners. So that the voting partners are the 6 local authorities, which means that the leaders of the 6 local authorities actually make the decisions on funding the projects within the growth deal portfolio. So it's all devolved, decentralized and devolved down to a very local level, because we know our economy better than anyone. So that's how it works, Bethan.
Lovely. And another question for you, Alwen, from Dan Moria. Can you give some more guidance around the increased job numbers, please? I see 10 to 15 jobs per 1 million in funding stated. This is quite a wide range.
Yeah, so again, I think it's dependent on the project. Overall, at the portfolio level, what's happened here and why we've got £30 million of capital funding available is that projects that were originally moving forward for growth deal funding have not continued within that process for various reasons. Robin mentioned earlier, one of the projects has fallen out of the growth deal because it's attracted funding from a different source. So we've got £30 million worth of capital released, and it's therefore, and we need the replacement projects that are selected as part of this process now to fill that gap left by those projects that are no longer moving forward, and that means we have to be able to demonstrate how these new projects being selected can deliver the jobs, can bring the investment, and can deliver overall value into the economy. So the scope there, 10 to 15 jobs per 1 million, it will be, I guess it will be different from sector to sector, and it goes back to the detail of what the project is and demonstrating how that project, with the investment being sought from the growth deal, will deliver those jobs. Perhaps if I could take the opportunity as well just to talk a little bit more broadly about what we're really looking for. Is it just jobs or is it just investment? The answer is jobs and investment and overall growth, sustainable growth within the economy is what we've signed up to in the agreement with government. That's what we have to deliver. But we are looking at a broader sense of value as well, very much about what projects bring into communities, how social value is delivered, the impact that the investment will make on people at a local level. And we, you know, I mentioned earlier in my presentation about the language, the culture, the heritage. I think all of that is important, and all of that will be considered in the decision-making process. We want to see the value of the investment stay local. That's really important. So adopting procurement principles that ensure that can happen. So we've talked a lot about jobs and GVA and investment, but I just wanted to make it really clear that there is a wider scope of consideration here about social value, the difference projects can make within communities and to people as well, because that's essentially what I think we want to build on as well.
Lovely, diolch yn fawr. Question from Justin Mason. I think Stuart may be able to answer this one. Match funding from commercial source. Is there a potential issue with subsidy control?
Thanks, Bethan. The short answer is yes, but the way that this new funding call is being developed is that we have that accounted for at the outset. So one of the appendices, if you cast your mind back to Head's presentation, sets out that initial assessment of potential subsidy control implications, and we've got 7 principles there which we would assess every application against, and we ask the applicants to provide us with their view on that position. Thereafter we would then take our own view and hopefully arrive at a consensus as to what can be put in place to mitigate any subsidy control issues. There is extensive guidance available from both Welsh governments and UK governments online as well. So I would recommend that anybody considering making an application to us in this round consults that guidance, which is freely available as from the start of this year when the new subsidy control regime came into effect.
Lovely, thanks Stuart. And another question on match funding for Heath. Can private investment already used on site purchase, planning and consenting count as match funding?
So yes, so private investment into acquiring a site, that could be part of the overall total investment in the project and set out in the business case. Costs around planning and consenting, while being revenue-based costs primarily, could be set out as capitalised costs in the business case as well if it was approved. So it's a yes.
Okay, and another one for you, Heath. What should a project do if it doesn't fit into any of the existing programmes?
Unfortunately, if a project doesn't fit into one of the 5 programmes within the growth deal, it's not going to be suitable for this funding opportunity. So the deal we have with government is that we can invest the funding in projects within those 5 programme areas. So a project that doesn't fit into at least one of those wouldn't be suitable for this funding.
Okay, bring in Robin for the next question. What will a project need to do to demonstrate it can meet the carbon emissions and biodiversity targets?
Thank you. So the targets for those that might not have seen them are that we want all projects to aim to meet net zero operational emissions, a 40% reduction in embodied carbon, so the carbon going into the material and the kind of whole life of the building, and then a 10% biodiversity net gain. And there's more information on our site about the reason for those targets. But basically, emissions in the building and infrastructure sector are about 40% of global emissions and not moving. So by taking this on, we're looking to do our bit to reduce those, but also critically to provide the opportunity and incentives for businesses in the region to provide jobs and training in reduced carbon, low carbon construction and biodiversity aware construction. So in terms of the process, what we would be looking for at the expression of interest stage is to outline considerations that the project is taking in these regards. And then if the project was successful in getting through and being selected to go forward, then the team will provide more detailed guidance along the lines of our methodology that we've developed with ARUP, and some access to support and training opportunities to help complete a number of pro formas, templates basically that will show how the project is delivering against those targets. So basically a summary at this stage, and then support moving forward.
Lovely, diolch Robin. The questions seem to be slowing down now, so if you do have a burning question, please type it into the box. Coming back to you, Heath. Is there a requirement to demonstrate jobs benefiting rural areas?
There isn't a specific requirement to demonstrate jobs benefiting rural areas across the whole growth deal. If there are projects applying as part of the Agri-Food and Tourism programme, we are asking for proposals to demonstrate how they would deliver for rural communities within that programme's context. But I think in general, as Alwen's pointed out earlier, we're not just interested in the number of jobs, we're interested in how we can spread the benefits of these investments across North Wales as a whole, including our rural communities. So projects that are able to demonstrate that wider benefit are going to score well.
We touched upon business case planning earlier. There's a question here now. Is there any support available to complete the application form, Heath?
There's no additional support available from ourselves to complete the application form. There is a detailed guidance document available on the website which sets out exactly what we expect to be completed in each section, including suggestions as to what a strong answer would look like. So hopefully that is sufficient for applicants to complete the form.
Lovely. And one final question to David. What status of land interest would be acceptable if ownership is still in progress?
Thanks, Bethan. I think on that basis, if a title is still it's still being assembled, or it's still in the process of being acquired, documents such as an agreement for lease, an option, possibly development agreement, I think they'd be acceptable. Again, probably a statement in relation to how negotiations are ongoing as well in relation to site assembly. If there's a willing seller, for instance. Something which builds certainty and builds confidence that that land ownership is not a fundamental issue in terms of project delivery. I think that would be the way to address that.
Lovely, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for all those questions that have been flowing in, and hopefully we managed to answer. So diolch I bawb sy'n wedi ymuno heddiw, panelwyr a'r cyfieithydd, tîm sydd bod yn gweithio'n galad yn y cefndir, ac yn enwedig i chi y gynulleidfa, a gobeithio bod y sesiwn yma wedi bod yn fuddiol iawn i chi. Ond os nad ydych chi llwyddo i ateb yr holl gwestiynau, mi fydd y tîm yn cysylltu nôl hefo chi. Ac os gennych chi ragor o gwestiynau ar ôl y sesiwn yma, mae croeso chi e-bostio unau cyfleoedd@uchelgaisgogledd.cymru neu opportunities@ambitionnorth.wales. Diolch eto am eich cwmni a hwyl am y tro.